Guys, welcome back for another episode here at Mark's Photography Spot. This one is going to be the first in that series of videos I previewed last week called From Snapshots to Photographs, which is basically a series of videos that will hopefully help you get out of automatic mode on your camera and teach you how to take control of your camera a little bit more, get more creative with your photographs, and ultimately create better photographs and have more fun doing it at the same time. I really think the series will be helpful for you, and I wanted to start off by discussing what I called last week. I called it the exposure triangle, and that's, I guess, a fair description, but it's really about the components that go into making a photograph or creating the exposure, as a lot of people will say, I got the perfect exposure. Well, what is that? Really, it's about successfully manipulating light. That's really what photography is about. I think when it comes down to it, it's about managing and exploiting and taking advantage of the light that's available. Because without light, it's kind of hard to make a photograph. So cameras allow us to manage light and manipulate light. And the three components that go into making an image, either on the sensor of the camera or on the film, are the ones that we can adjust and tweak and create different images out of by knowing how to use those. And those three factors are ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And all three of those work together, kind of like a triangle. You've got to have three strong points in a triangle in order to make a triangle. And whenever you adjust one of those, ISO, aperture, or shutter speed, it affects the other two, and they all kind of work in tandem. All three of those, when you think about it, are ways to manipulate light, and I'll explain that real briefly here, and then in the following videos I'll go through and dig a little deeper into each one of them, probably starting with ISO, but I'll start with that here right now and kind of give you an idea of what each of these are. ISO is essentially the camera's sensitivity to light. The higher the ISO number, the more sensitive the camera or film, back in the old days it used to be called ASA, is really the sensitivity to the light that hits the film or the sensor on the camera. Most digital cameras now have an ISO range of from 80 to 100 at the low end to as high as maybe 12,000 or higher on the high end on those big full state-of-the-art SLRs. For most people, the range that you would use would be something between, say, a 100 and maybe a 1600 or a 30 or a 3200 number. The 100 is kind of the standard, and that is a camera that's a little sensitive to light that hits it, but not super sensitive, whereas a 3200 or 6400 is something that's super sensitive to light. And what that allows you to do is, the higher the ISO number gives you the capability of maybe capturing an image in less than favorable lighting conditions, say at a concert, outside at night, that type of thing. So ISO allows you to do that, but it usually comes at a price of introducing a little bit of noise or grain to the image, because to increase that ISO, you're increasing the sensitivity, which can add noise to the image and maybe not give you as clean and noise-free an image as you would have if you shot everything at a low SIO, or at a low ISO. But sometimes you just have to. You can't get around it. You need to increase the ISO if you want to get any shot at all. The second component, aperture, is once again another way of manipulating light, and aperture is essentially the size of the opening that light goes through to hit the sensor. The larger the aperture, the more light that comes in. The smaller the aperture, the less light. So it allows a certain amount of light to come into the camera. You can use a big aperture. You may hear this term, I shot that wide open or full open. That would be an aperture, say like a 1.8 or a 2, that basically allows a lot of light in, which you would probably do with a higher ISO setting to get a picture in a concert, say. But the other thing that aperture allows you to do is to control perspective in the picture. A big wide open aperture like a f2 is going to give you a lot of light, but it's also going to give you a shallow depth of field, which means you only have a smaller range that things are in focus front to back. So you can take a portrait or shoot an image of something and have that in focus, but behind it will be blurred. That's a neat creative effect. On the other end, you might use an aperture of an f11 or f16 to get a really deep depth of field, which allows you to have images or items at the front of the frame as well as the back all be sharp and in focus. And that works great for things like landscape photography, that type of thing. The third component is shutter speed. And once again, that allows you to manipulate light. The faster the shutter speed, that's the less amount of time that light gets to go in through the aperture and hit the sensor. The longer the shutter speed, the shutter stays open, more light comes in. So you can manipulate light that way. But the main reason that people will use shutter speed is to emphasize or de-emphasize motion in an image. If you're at a sporting event and you've got athletes running across the field or race cars going around the track, you're probably going to want to use a fast shutter speed, maybe something like 1,000th of a second, to stop that action, so you can see the car racing by you at 200 miles an hour. On the other hand, if you want to introduce a blur or an artistic effect into the picture, you might set a shutter speed at half a second or a second to kind of maybe capture somebody walking across the frame. That gives a little bit of a blur or sense of motion to it. So all three of those, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, allow you to manipulate light in different ways. And by adjusting them up or down, you can get more light or less light, plus give you the ability to create some interesting effects in your photographs. That's what I'm going to dig into in the next section of videos, where I talk about each of these in a little more depth. And I probably will start off with ISO, and that'll probably be in the next week or so. But one thing I would recommend you get if you're interested in learning more about how exposure works and how those interact with each other is that you pick up a book by a guy by the name of Brian Peterson called Understanding Exposure. He's a professional photographer and photographic educator, I guess, for lack of a better term. He's written a lot of books on various photography-related subjects, and this is a very good book that explains ISO, aperture, and shutter speed and how they interact. He has some great images in here that he uses with some well-written examples, kind of showing you why you might want to do one thing over another. And it's a very good book. I've had it for a year and a half, and I've read it probably twice at this point. I keep referring back to it just when I'm stuck or can't figure out why an image came out the way I wanted it to. Okay. So Understanding Exposure is a great book. Once again, thanks for all the subscribers, new subscribers, the views, the comments. Keep them coming. Look for the next video in this series in the next week to 10 days. Been kind of busy at work, so hopefully things can free up a little bit and I can get back to having a little bit more leisure time than I have had since the first of the year. But I will do the next video, probably on ISO. In the meantime, check out the Flickr group, Mark's Photography Spot. That's the group, Mark's Photography Spot, on Flickr. Join the group and you can submit images and we can discuss them. And I'll go over some images each week on the Friday photo share. So until next time, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate all the support, and we will see you later. Happy shooting.